Hello, everyone. I am Mila D'Antonio, Principal Analyst on Omdia's Customer Engagement Team, and I am joined today by Rahul Garg. He's the AI Product Leader at Genesys, where he is tasked with building the next generation AI engine to power Genesys Cloud. So, welcome, Rahul.
Thank you, Mila. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here. Rahul and I are here talking today about conversational AI's big transformation into this really powerful autonomous system that's capable of handling complex, intelligent interactions. So naturally, this transformation sparks a lot of big questions. Questions like how to balance automation with human touch. What are some of the use cases that I could start with? How do I get started? How do I overcome challenges? And what does the contact center of the future look like, given the context of this shifting landscape? So let's get started. There's no question that AI is transformational, but many companies do struggle with, where to begin on their AI and automation journey. They face many barriers. At Omdia, we have brand new research that shows the top barriers include data privacy, budget limitations, AI integration. Those are the top ones in that survey. With these barriers, the transition from traditional workflows to really creating this AI-powered operation can really feel overwhelming, and organizations often wonder on, how do I take the first step? What are the first crucial steps? So, Rahul, what's your advice? How can companies take the first step for partial automation in their customer service operation?
It's a great question, and I hear it every day from all of our customers whenever we have a conversation. One of the things we tell a lot of them is there's two ways to approach it, right? One is to start small, use high impact use cases that are low risk, right? But the other way is also, how do you get the most ROI very quickly out of some of these new AI technologies we have that are kind of set it and forget it type of technologies, right? So things like predictive routing, which will save you HT, but as a customer, you don't actually have to train or build a model. We've done the heavy lifting there. So things like that, and even Agent Copilot capabilities that do summarization using Gen AI in the background. For customers, you don't have to do heavy lifting, right? So for them, a lot of customers, what they'll do is they'll turn some of these features on and get an ROI right away, right? So you could save on call times, wrap up times, and be able to take more calls. So all of a sudden, customers are starting to say, oh, there's value in AI. I've actually proven a business use case, and now I can reinvest in more business use cases. But one of the things, I tell a customer never to do is to go in and say, I'm going to transform the entire org or contact center overnight, because that's never going to work, right? Because you got to show value quickly, build a plan, build a roadmap to get there. AI is not just there to automate. It can do other tasks underneath the covers. It can solve a lot of problems, right? Whether they are human in the loop problems or self-service problems. So we see a lot of those, and we try to tell them, pick the right AI for the right use case. Think of where do you spend the most money in your contact center? What is it that you want to optimize and drive towards those type of capabilities with AI? In terms of data governance and privacy, right, I do think that is a big problem that a lot of customers do get hung up on, right? And I think it varies, again, by country, locale, customers, right? In Europe, we do see some use cases are harder for them to do due to the new GDPR AI acts. We're seeing in the US, some customers are less likely to use some of the AI technologies due to AI directives that are coming through. But we are also seeing some customers that actually spend the time understanding the act, going through model cards that we deliver, going through a governance board that actually asks all these questions up front. Once they clear those governance boards, then they're kind of given full reign to actually use AI quickly, right? So what I tell customers is, even in our sales cycles, right, tell me what your requirements are for your governance board. Let me fill out those questionnaires for you as soon as possible, so that when you do sign or when you're ready to move, that is not the barrier, because that shouldn't be the barrier. The barrier should be more around, how do I go faster? What technologies to use? What are those thought processes that I need to think through?
No, those are great points, Rahul. So what I'm hearing is overall, start small, but think big. It's really important to clearly define the problem that you're trying to solve. Whether the biggest pain point is your customer service operation, is it long wait times, is it high costs? So really identifying those key challenges first, and then prioritizing those areas like data privacy and security, like you cited.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't, yeah, I tell our customers it's not new, right? AI has been around for years in the contact center. I think there had been a hype cycle a couple of years ago. Technology has evolved where it's becoming easier to develop and build and deploy AI technologies. But you really do, and maybe that's a product part of me. Let's just think of it as a roadmap of how do I get to my end goal, but know what your end goal is and work your way backwards.
I love that. Yeah, and essentially overall, automation also in the end of the day, at the end of the day, it's not about replacing human agents. It's about augmenting them, freeing them up for more complex issues. So that really brings me to my next question. Businesses are increasingly relying on automation to enhance efficiency and to improve the customer experience. We see a lot of that in via virtual assistants, next best action, contact summarization, and our research at Omdia, it shows that 26% of respondents say that they deploy one bot for every 10 agents. Which to us, this signals an increased automation support with bots essentially handling more tasks per agents. However, as AI becomes more sophisticated, there's a big question around human intervention, right? So not every customer service interaction needs an instant AI response. So Ro, how would you say companies should balance AI automation with human intervention?
I think it's not a or, it's an and, right? AI should be automated, but you should also have AI for human intervention. What we see with a lot of clients, they're kind of on both sides of the scale, right? Either I want to go all automated or I want to go all human with AI in the middle. The technologies are allowing you to do both, right? And kind of find where you want the pendulum shift to kind of be. What I tell a lot of customers is you're likely to probably get started much quicker with augmented AI, right? So copilots and things like that, because you have better understanding of the customers coming in, but your human agents are your line of defense there, right? Preventing AI from going rogue in some cases. But one of the things we spend a lot of time is how do we use the things that you're doing with a copilot and actually use that to train virtual agents or drive that same data set back down to the virtual agents so that you're once you are comfortable with the AI technologies working in a use case, you can actually then automate that use case, right? So instead of making, again, these big projects of, I want to automate all this stuff, mixing it together. One of the examples I can give you is, virtual agents now do summarizations, right? But we waited 6 to 7 months after summaries where with agents, we got a lot of feedback from agents. We continued to improve them. But now companies do trust virtual agents to summarize wrap-up calls at the end automatically. And then the benefits of that is data that they never had, right? Similarly, with some of the other technologies that we have in knowledge, right? Knowledge generation. We spent a lot of time making sure agents were comfortable with knowledge articles that are getting generated and then give that to a virtual agent as a technology to turn on, right? So we are continuously working to help our customers get very comfortable with the technology with copilots, and then reuse that same technology with virtual agents.
Yeah, I think an interesting way to think about it is to think of it like a partnership, where AI excels at the speed and efficiency, handling those repetitive tasks. Where humans, they bring in the emotional intelligence, the creativity, the deep problem solving skills. So, I do agree with you that the best customer experience happens when AI and human agents are working together seamlessly.
Yeah. And I think handoffs are key too, right? Like if I am talking to a virtual agent, I always have this with an airline that I travel a lot where I'm chatting with them because inevitably I have to change a flight. And I talk to a virtual agent and then I get transferred to an agent, and the agent tells me to wait 3 minutes while they read the entire conversation, right? Which to me is not it's similar to when you get transferred agent to agent, right? So how do we use AI to make those kind of things seamless, right? And that's really AI working with the agent, right? The virtual agent doing a summary handoff, telling him what was the reason for my call, so that the agent actually can quickly say, "Oh, I understand you're here to change a flight. Let me go look up your booking ID."
Right. Really, it's a essentially a hybrid model, really to ensure that customers get those fast responses when AI is a best fit, but that they are transferred seamlessly for more urgent matters to reduce their frustration.
Yeah.
So we talked about how striking the right balance between AI automation and human intervention. It's important in delivering seamless customer experiences, but beyond just automation, AI has evolved significantly. We're far beyond simple chatbot interactions. Today's AI is capable of much more than reciting simple FAQs. For one, call routing, self-service, they're both gaining momentum, and our research and Omdia shows that 53% of respondents indicate that as a primary use case. We also see AI is being used for generating insights, for monitoring agent performance. So can you share some of the advanced use cases that you're seeing conversational AI being used for that really helps to showcase its full potential in the customer service arena?
Yeah. I think the word conversational AI is a limiting word personally. Right. I see a lot of what we're doing in the industry is AI for everyone. Right. It's not just for those end users. It's not just for agents, but we're also looking at use cases for supervisors and admins. Right. How do we use AI to assist them in real time? I think predictive and proactive AI has probably been around for a very long time. I don't think customers saw the value until they started a lot of these AI kind of ventures. But I think predictive engagement type of technologies where it knows when and how to engage me are key technologies, right? You could have a virtual agent on a website, but somebody may not know to use it. But using predictive technologies, you could actually understand here's a segment of a user, here's kind of what they're doing based off their behavior on a website. Now I should pop up and say, hey, are you looking to buy X product, or are you looking to book flights between Houston and New Jersey? But using predictive technologies, you could actually seed that conversation and be much more rich, much more serving to that customer, right? Predictive routing. I always, every time I talk to our customers, I say, if you're not using predictive routing, you're missing out, because it's a very easy thing to turn on, right? There's not a lot of work you have to do, but what it can do, the power underneath it can do is actually save you real dollars in the contact center by reducing your average handle time, by finding the right agent for the right customer. Right? A lot of that is based off segment data, understanding what the customer is looking for, their intent, and finding the right agents that deal with those type of intents, those segments much better. And it'll drive true CSAT, right, to your contact center. So that's really where I see predictive. And then I see other advanced use cases around supervisors, right? If you think of a contact center, their biggest cost is agents, but they have supervisors you have maybe one supervisor to 50 agents, right? That doesn't scale as, we've all known in our real lives, right? One manager can't scale to 50 people, right? So using AI to actually do some of the repetitive tasks, like going through conversations and evaluating them in real time, right? And then telling a supervisor, hey, these are the ones that you probably should go coach, versus I have to do what supervisors do today is spot check conversations, right? And find the right one. And then actually, or find bad conversations to then go do the coaching. But now with AI, you could actually do them all, right? Because AI is using a generative model to say, what are the questions you want to answer? Can I answer them from this conversation? If it can, then it'll tell the supervisor, this is the score I've given you. on these conversations, the supervisor can then say, let me see all the bad scores, or let me see the ones you are unsure of. So I can actually help score those, and you can learn from those how I score, right? But we see a lot of those use cases that aren't necessarily forward facing or consumer AI, conversational AI, but they drive huge values in the contact center. And that's really where we tell our customers to also look at, right? Like there's those use case summarization is a great use case where we started with just summarizing a conversation, but now we're actually pulling insights out of that conversation, throwing them into journey management capabilities. So you can now see end-to-end journeys and then really drive those experiences to those customers that you want, right? So those are some of the advanced use cases, right? Why, I'm probably one of the very few that says I think conversational AI should be renamed to just contact center AI or customer or sorry, experience AI, right? Like AI is going to drive that experience end to end, and it's going to be sprinkled throughout their journey or their conversation with with a company.
Yeah, those are great points you make. And all those advancements that you cited, predictive and contact summarization, I think they're all working together to really make the contact center capable of handling those complex interactions, understand context, and predict those customer needs. And I think in doing so, we're seeing this shift of the contact center from being reactive, traditionally reactive, to proactive and anticipating customer needs. So I think the use cases, we're only going to see them grow because of that shift. As we explore the advanced use case of conversational AI, it's clear that the technology is rapidly evolving beyond traditional chatbot capabilities. Conversational AI as a category, I've heard you mention this on the previous call. Conversational AI as a category is disappearing in favor of more agentic AI. What does that shift mean in practical terms for customer service teams? Because in our research, we found that 65% of respondents said they plan to use agentic AI within the next 18 months. So what does this transition look like? How will it redefine the role of human agents in the contact center?
It's a great question. I hear this a lot, right? I do think agentic has become a little bit of a marketing term, a buzz term, right? And so I want to step back to what do I think agentic actually is, right? And the way we look at it is it's using AI to actually complete tasks or creating skill sets for virtual agents or even agents, right, to do guided flows. I think over the next 18 months, people are going to start using these new. So if you look at today, right, a virtual agent is scripted, very, very scripted. It uses AI to understand the language, but then take you around the conversation based off what you're asking, right? Where I see some of the agentic systems coming in play are you're creating these new skills or these new guides, right? That agents and virtual agents will use that are much more natural. So the way we're looking at it is customers today, like the process of building a virtual agent is a business person will say, this is the requirement. These are the steps I follow. Hey, developer, go build these and tool architect at Genesis or any chatbot or conversational AI tool where you're scripting the intents and analytics. With agentic, you're using generative AI to actually drive that conversation to be a little bit less structured, but still have guardrails around it. So here's a task of how I pre-qualify somebody for a mortgage. First I ask them these pieces of information, then I ask them these pieces of information, I call these different things. But taking that right up, right? That some customers call them the SOP documents, some of them call them process documents, but taking that process and actually giving that to the agentic framework to say, here's a process you should follow. When a customer asks about, let's say, pre-qualifying for a mortgage, these are the things you should ask first. Now, if you know some of these answers because they've been passed in through customer record data, you could confirm them. And then these are the API calls you call, right? So there's still that mix of the backend processes, but where it becomes easier is you're actually much more flexible. So if I come in to that same process with a virtual chat with a chatbot today, it gets very stuck on what is your name? And if I say, my name is Rahul. My address is, 121 Main Street. It it may not work, right? Where the agentic systems will say, "Oh, I understood he said a name and he said an address. So now I'll just jump to the next question," right? And we've in the past tried to do this with entity extraction and slot filling, and it works to some extent, right? But it won't work in the way customers think, right? Imagine when you call a contact center, you kind of blurb out everything to them at the same time. So what we're seeing is these new guides, these new agents, right? AI agents, I think is the term the industry is using. Until you put guardrails around them, and let's say you tell a virtual agent, here are the 50 guides that but there's also here's something that still requires structure, right? I think that's really where I see the world going, because not every process will change overnight. If you think of insurance, right, they have a very structured, this is what you do to bind insurance. Like, you have to go down a path that's very structured. And you cannot give that to an agentic framework because of legal regulations, right? But then you have other tasks in there, right? Like, what do you want to buy? What type of what type of insurance do you want to buy? Where it can be kind of like, hey, I want to buy homeowners insurance. Here's my address. Here's all this information. What do you recommend? And it could have that back and forth. It can have a little bit of that reasoning, right, with the guardrails, so that it's not just out in the wild, right, doing whatever you want it to do, but it's also it's got the guardrails. It's within the realm of what you want it to do. It stays where you want it to stay without having to worry as a customer, right, or as an enterprise about how far it'll go. Does that make sense?
So yeah, it does. So instead of a chatbot directing a customer to a human service rep for an insurance claim, for your example, agentic AI could, it gathers the necessary details. It could even check the policy information, maybe even process the approvals. This shift to me signals that customer support agents are really moving from being those frontline responders to more complex problem solvers. I think ultimately the outcome we're going to see is the role of human agents becoming more specialized, handling more complex or emotionally charged interactions.
Yeah, and I think you'll see those same agentic frameworks help agents too, right? Like, as you have new agents or you have new tasks that are coming about, you can use some of these agentic guides with those agents, right? And then as things kind of progress, some of the repeatable things that agents may have to do, you could imagine them passing it back to a virtual agent that will go collect, let's say, PCI information and come back to the agent with, hey, I already did this for you. Here you go. And now you're meeting some of those requirements, with regulations and security that you want to do. And those, that's just one example, right? It could be hundreds of different examples that agents need tasks to do. It can either listen in, gather the information, give it to the agent. Hey, I've already completed this. Is this correct? Or it could be, self-service.
Right. No, that's an interesting point you make. So as agentic AI continues to reshape the contact center, like you detailed, it raises a bigger question about what the future holds. Our research indicates that there are significant increases in the uses of conversational AI technologies. There has been over the past year. So what does the contact center of the future look like, given these shifts? What are some additional major shifts that we'll see over the next 3 to 5 years?
The big one will be, you'll see AI prevalent not only for virtual agents. I think it'll be throughout the contact center, right? You could imagine an administrator coming in and saying, what does my day look like? Where should I focus? What should I do? AI guiding them to, whether it is, queues that need to be improved, or even, APIs failing. You'll see AI actually driving journey management capabilities, right? I think that's kind of like that unlocked potential of a lot of the contact centers is they have data, but they don't know what that data means or how to use it. AI can help make sense of that, right? I think supervisors' roles will change to be more coaching, right? How do I coach an agent in real time? And I think real time probably is another area where you'll see AI actually helping coach an agent in real time on a call. So you're talking too much, or your attitude is not helpful. You should improve that, right? In real time, those kind of capabilities, or even compliance checking, right? We're starting to see that now with AI actually. So if you think of QM, right? If you do QM post call and you've realized that somebody didn't say an FDIC warning to a customer, they have to call the customer back and actually go through that. And AI kind of give them a checklist in real time saying, hey, you need to do this, 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 this. Check you did it, check you didn't, right? So I see it being prevalent not only in self-service, is kind of what I'm trying to get to, is I see it throughout the contact center. I think it's going to improve everyone's role at the contact center. It's going to drive efficiencies throughout. And I think contact centers are going to shift from kind of the KPIs they've been stuck on with, CSAT KPIs and AHT, ACW, those kind of KPIs, and move towards experience, right? How do we drive the best experience? How are customers actually spending more? What are we driving? And we're hearing that from a lot of our customers as well, right? Like contact centers are starting to generate revenue. So how do we get there? Like, how do we find the right agent to prevent a churn? Or how do we find the right agent to actually upsell a customer? Those kind of things we'll see more and more of as a focus versus I need to save costs, I need to cut costs, right? Where I think a lot of contact centers are stuck in today.
Yeah, and I think you touched upon also something important there, where it's not just about the contact center in the future. It's about the whole enterprise handling customer inquiries and being responsible for customer engagement, at least the frontline employees. And I think AI will enable that. And so I think we're to your point, we are moving beyond this traditional model of reactive service. Where customers reach out with their problems, to this future where these AI driven systems are really going to anticipate their issues and offer solutions before they even realize they have a problem. So with that, Ro, I think we're out of time, but I really appreciate you joining the conversation today. And I really enjoyed your point of view on conversational AI and how it's reshaping customer service in the contact center. So thanks again.
Thank you for having me. Glad we could get this done.